Okay, so welcome to Cincinnati, or to Soft and Tender Cincinnati Live. So this is no camera work here. You know, there ain't no magic here. This is raw. This is unedited. You know, and I want to just take the time. Well, after we let's get this mic situated first, and then we will have no distractions. Check check. Okay. Well, everybody, I don't know. I don't even know what episode of Soft and Tender this would technically be. Welcome to episode, I don't know, 16 of Soft and Tender, we'll just say. So I would like to introduce everybody that is on the stage, all right? To my far right, we've got Damian Hoskins. Everybody clap it up for Damian Hoskins. Damian is a father, husband, brother, and son hailing from Cincinnati's West End. We got the West End in the building? Yeah, okay. He is the Executive Director of Elementz, also a 13-year teaching veteran, and was previously the Vice President of Arts Impact at ArtsWave. Damian is also an artist himself, an oil painter, graphic designer, and furniture maker. I don't know many of them, so what's up, Davia? I have this quote from the internet, so you know it's real right here. So it says, quote, "I hope to leave behind a legacy of young people who will work collaboratively and creatively to solve the region's major issues with the hope that they were inspired by something that I was fortunate enough to share with them." End quote. Everybody, one more time for Damian Hoskins, please. Now, to my direct right, we have Davia Crutchfield. Hey, Davia. Davia is an experienced creative strategist, a writer who designed her career combining skills as a cultural researcher with passion for art and storytelling to form one powerful objective: uplifting the multitude of Black narratives in academic and non-traditional spaces. Davia is an arts, entertainment, history, theology, and humanities enthusiast whose research includes interdisciplinary examinations of race, sex, gender, and Christianity. Her creativity and love of mysteries translates into her writing and personal style. And this is my favorite part. She believes that that when love and collaboration meet hand in hand, the results are revolutionary. Everybody clap it up for Davia. And then to my left, I got my good brother Kareem Simpson. Kareem is an author hailing from Covington, Kentucky. We got Kentucky in the building? Okay. You know what? I spent way more time in Kentucky than I ever expected in my life since this trip. And you know, Kentucky's cool. We'll talk about Skyline Chili later. His work has been published and exhibited across the U.S. and throughout the greater Cincinnati and northern Kentucky region. His stories speak freely about what it is like growing up as a Black gay man and how those experiences dictate how hard and long we love. Simpson is also the founder and chief imagination officer of Sparklight Creative Group, a small personal and professional development agency that inspires artists and creative entrepreneurs to build better businesses. In 2023, Simpson received the President's Award presented by the Northern Kentucky NAACP for, quote, his tireless effort to elevate the region's Black community through personal and professional development. Everybody, please welcome.
I got Duncanson.
We'll bring it, yeah. All right, so I want to kick things off by first, can everybody please just, we'll go around and just explain to folks who your primary father figure was growing up. Now, think of this in terms of, it can be biological, but it can also be more role model based, and it can also be just an expanded definition of fatherhood. Who have you kind of experienced fatherhood from growing up in your life? And Damian, we'll start with you, Damian.
Joel Hoskins. Joel Hoskins is my biological father. He lives in Northside, so can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a very interesting and sort of parenthetical relationship. My mother and my father were divorced when I was 3 years old, and so a lot of what my father instilled in me before the time of their divorce was just this really weird, indelible impression that he had on me because he is an artist, and I just remember seeing him create something out of nothing. Blank canvases turning into portraits, still lifes, all that sort of stuff. And it was alchemic and magical. oddly enough, after my parents got divorced, I recognized that my grandmother had the same ability. And if you know anything about Black grandmothers, they are magicians. Father, I felt like we're born from the same star. And she had the ability to turn $3 into Thanksgiving dinner. Come on. Right? And so oddly enough, that inspiration was sort of from both of them. But my father taught me something different about legacy and about love that my grandmother was able to sort of frame, but my dad was able to sort of materialize, because I came back to live with my father when I was about 14 years old. And we'll probably get into that story. But to answer the question, those two individuals were the greatest inspirations of my life. I love both of them tremendously, but I am Joel Hoskins' son.
Yeah, thank you.
That's beautifully stated. Real quick, just shout out to the magicians in the audience. I have my grandmother right here, and one of my grandmothers here, and then my beautiful mother, who's also a grandmother, over in the corner. So,
That's her sister. That ain't her mom.
so shout out to the magicians in the audience with us. My primary paternal figure is blessedly my father, Davia Crutchfield. I think I am one of the most fortunate people on the planet because my dad is my dad, but also because my dad's dad was like our dad, right? So I grew up in this pattern and practice of paternalism. You know, the Holy Spirit dropped that in my spirit this morning, that I was able to be cultivated in an environment that centered family, that centered relationship with God, that centered community, and none of those things were absent in any aspect of life. My family also grew up under the umbrella of, if you see somebody in need, you participate. And that was something that was instilled, from my understanding, from my grandfather's father, you know, Reverend Howard Crutchfield. So I believe that that lineage of paternalism was so instrumental in every aspect of our life, that my brother and I, our spouses, our children have the privilege of also being cultivated in that same spirit.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank
So I think my experience with male role models in the house was a little different. I don't know my current real father. I grew up with a stepfather who was very distant. Definitely know, like, okay, I'm my mom's son and he got these boys. So that's growing up like that. In addition, my mother's father was killed by a bail bondsman when she was 5. So she didn't grow up with a father in her home. I do have 4 uncles, so spotty kind of male role models. So I'm saying all this to say that my paternal, the most paternal person that I had, people that I had in my life, was my mother, was my grandmother, was my great-grandmother. They're the ones that taught me to stand up for myself. They taught me to be hard-headed when I needed to be hard-headed, but they taught me to pick the right, to be a natural learner. And so those 3 individuals, in addition to my grandmother's sister, they were my paternal figure and my maternal figure when they needed to be.
Right.
And I don't say that lightly, because I could have just said, oh, my stepfather was, but it's they taught me how to be me.
You know, as I was doing my research on the 3 of y'all, right? First of all, y'all are all amazing individuals, and it's truly, every conversation that I've had with each of y'all has almost turned into a soft and tender conversation. I've had to be like, hold on, just save it for Saturday, and so one thing though that really became prevalent for me is noticing that legacy runs through all of the work. Your work spans from volunteering to serving on boards, leading the youth creative arts organization Elementz. Can you speak on why it's important for you to be a servant of one's community? And what about your relationship with your father inspires you to have a heart of service?
When my dad was 17 years old, he enlisted in the Vietnam War because his brother was killed in Vietnam. And so it was really important for him on two country, but then two was a service to our family. And so he, because of that story, and he was a door gunner on the Huey helicopters and won a few medals, but then at the same time, it was really interesting. He was the, in his platoon, he was the cook. My father can really cook. He can really cook. And so it was really interesting to understand my father as a servant leader. When you cook for people, there is a relationship that is developed. They become a part of something that you are able to guide in specific spaces. And so that level of servant leadership was really sort of framed, I think, in him at that age. And then it became something that he passed down to me. Not just me, I have 4 sisters. And so passed down to our family, all of my siblings really. But for me, when it came to my professional career, as I mentioned, my grandmother wanted to be a school teacher, but she was not able to. She began to have children really, really early. And then her life just took a very different trajectory. And I don't want to get too convoluted in this story, but I will say this is really important. I went to Central State University, historically black college in Wilberforce, Ohio. And my junior year, I ran out of financial aid, and I was gonna have to drop out. And then my mother came to pick me up. She was driving me back, and I told her to turn around and I'd figure it out. I really wasn't gonna figure it out. I was gonna try to figure it out, but it turns out the very next week, my grandmother paid for my tuition with a credit card. And as a result of that, those two individuals, again, you'll hear this theme, but those two individuals really sort of sparked this understanding in me that service is my responsibility. And there is this really interesting understanding that I got from both of them, and it was really articulated by my grandmother, that in most instances, it's your responsibility to be a thermostat and not a thermometer. Thermometers respond to circumstances, thermostats set the conditions for circumstances. And as a servant leader, you set those conditions. That's your responsibility, especially in a world that we live in now. There's a lot of complications, and there's a lot of people just reacting. And I learned a long time ago, if you stop at every dog that's barking, you'll never make it home. So you gotta set the conditions to make sure that not just you, but the people that you are responsible for are able to thrive. And that really is what inspires my work. I taught middle school, high school, and college for the last 25 years. And I recognized a very long time ago that, you know, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's a fact. That is a fact. And the real important thing to note about that from a servant leadership perspective is to make sure that when you are trying to impress upon them that they have potential, that the very first thing you have to do is shut up and listen to them, right? You have to be able to be an individual that, even though I'm old, that doesn't mean I know everything, right? And so it's an opportunity to just sort of open myself up to learning from them so I can help understand how to guide them. And in that guiding, that just basically means that I've been down this road before. It's not that I know everything, it's just I've been down this road before. And so there's some things that I can share with you, but you're gonna make this whole thing up. And the reality of that is that if you are going to lead somebody, you really have to accept the fact that if nobody's following you, you're just taking a walk. That's real, you know what I mean? So you have to impress upon them and open up with them that avenue to be wanting to be led, right? But it's not just leadership for the sake of leadership, it's leadership by multiplication. You're leading to make leaders, right? That's not for your ego. That's so that so at a certain point as a teacher, you realize that your job is finished when people don't need you anymore, right? But then,
wow, thank you for that. So, real quick, we have a music video that one of these laptops is plugged into. Can we get that back up? You mentioned I brought in the word service, right, and being a servant of the community, but I also think you made me think of something about also being a student, right, and how important it is to be a student in every space that you walk in. And I think that when I have felt like an effective educator, it's because I came in wanting to learn in this space before wanting to teach in this space, right? Now, this goes to you, Davia. I think this is a good segue into your work as a researcher, right? One of the things in your bio was all about uncovering mysteries, right? And this love for that. Now, in your research, how does your love of research reflect in your relationships with men in your life? And have you found it easier or more challenging to build with?
I'm going to ask you to answer it one more time.
Yeah, okay. So how does your love of research reflect in your relationship with men in your life? All right. And then have you found it easier or more challenging to build with men, given your knowledge and historical context?
Ooh, okay. I honestly believe my research and personal relationships connect in the way they do because I approach both with curiosity. And my objective in communication, I'm a communicologist at heart. Everything for me is about the conversation and how it builds out from there. Approaching a conversation, approaching a space, approaching a relationship, approaching a research topic with curiosity, it's not about providing the answer, it's about asking the why until you can't ask why anymore. Mm-hmm. And so even for me in conversation and relationship, so to go into the second part of your question, it doesn't complicate my ability to build and relate with men. If anything, I think it enhances it, because I don't approach spaces as, somebody might disagree, I don't approach spaces as the all-seeing, all-knowing Oz. It's more of the ambition to understand and to come to a space of resolution if there is conflict, not to sit there and do a pit against who's going to come out the supreme dominant of a space. Mm-hmm. So I think that actually evolves my relationships. I will say younger years before I got into the space as a researcher, I thought I had to know everything. I thought I did know a lot more than I thought I did. Right. And so especially being the oldest, I'm the oldest of my siblings, I'm the oldest of my cousins, I'm the first grandkid. Like, you walk through the door and everybody's going like, well, which way to go? And I'm like, this way, even though I don't know. It was one of those type of explorations. But younger, in my younger years, I thought I had to be, that's how I had to lead, was by knowing everything. Yeah. As a researcher, I learned that it was less of a leading from, okay, go the same way I'm going. It's more of a, what's your objective and where are you trying to get to? Yeah. Because if I can help to ask you questions that'll have you ask yourself those questions, then you'll start approaching spaces with curiosity as opposed to approaching them thinking you too have to know everything all the time. Right. So I think my research and personal relationships connect in that space of curiosity and coming to spaces of resolution when there are conflicts, not coming to a space of dominance.
Right. Well, I love that because there's so much humility in that approach, and I've been having a lot of talks recently about ego death and the importance of leaving your ego at the door for real, right? And so you make me think about that, and that actually transitions right over to Kareem also. So Kareem, I've had the honor of just being with you pretty much every day for the last 2.5 weeks, right? And I've seen you. I picked your brain about things. I've seen you maneuver through spaces, and I feel like that humility is something that you really do lead with in every space that you're in, right? And this idea of leading with curiosity, I see you do that, right? Now, you've bridged education, history, being a Black role model. You bridged all of these things. I've seen you bridge all of these things in real time, right? How do you stay anchored when working across so many systems at once?
It seems simple, but it's really not. You always think to why you're in this space. What leads you to be in this space? What motivates you to be in this space? And for me, it's generally only one or two things. Is to make whatever I'm doing better, holistic, pocket. It's what can I do to make this whole situation better? And a lot of times, sometimes it's not. I need to remove myself from it, and that's the humility, being humble, and saying sometimes I'm not the right fit. Kind of talking about the different types of spaces that I work in. So I do serve for on the board of the Covington Independent Schools. I am not an educator. One, I don't have any kids in the school district. Two, why does Kareem want to be on the board? Is to make that system better, and to create these policies and procedures to help the administration do better for our kids that live in Covington. Born in Newport, but I am definitely a Covington guy. Yeah. So to help them make the kiddos a lot smarter. I also serve on the Kenton County Planning Commission, Planning and Zoning, which not a lot of people know what that does. It's one of the most boring jobs that I've ever had in my life. And I'll tell, but you know, you learn institutions, you learn how to make things happen, because a lot of times as community enthusiasts, we want to make change when things have already been decided. I want to make change. I want to make change when it's being decided. Right, when it's and so right. When you have the not the know-how, but you have some type of authority how areas are being zoned for development, I sit at that table. Yeah. I don't have to, if it's zoned for development for single-use property. I'm getting a little bit deep into it, but stick with me. Stick with me. If I want to stop a multi-development from being developed, I need to be at the table that decides yes or no. I can't wait and protest it after it's already been allowed. And so I'm at that table because I want to make sure that voices like mine are represented and that are heard, and that we're at that level. So it's so kind of stay in those spaces every time I go into those meetings, because it's not as friendly as I would want it to be. But going in those spaces, I need to know why I'm here, and I need to stick with that. So that's what keeps it grounded and working those spaces.
Oh, I love that. And it's to Damian, what you're talking about, being proactive, right? That's essentially what you are doing. You're not waiting for things to present themselves. You are having a hand in what is being presented in the first place. Now, you're a role model, all right? And you say you're not an educator, but you just educated us, so you are an educator in that capacity, right? Now, Damian, you have spoken about your father as a role model, as a hero, right? What is one decision you made recently where his voice echoed in your head?
This is so weird because I think, this is weird because Kareem and I are similar in that regard. So I'm recently decided that I was gonna run to try to serve on the Cincinnati Public School Board. And it was a decision made a couple of weeks ago, but I recognize some of the difficulties and challenges that the school board is facing. Most of it is self-inflicted. A lot of it is really, really political, and none of it prioritizes kids. But my dad would tell me, he told me this when I was 14 years old, don't sit around and wait for stuff to happen, make it happen. That was an edict in my house. Don't sit around and wait for stuff to happen, make it happen. And from that, I began to understand that if I did not do anything proactive to make the things that I wanted to have happen, then I couldn't complain when it didn't. We live in a country right now where a lot of stuff is being foisted upon us. And then there's this sort of trickle down effect. And a lot of that is a part of my purpose. I am not a politician by any stretch of anybody's imagination. I do, however, have a purpose, and that purpose for my entire career has been the holistic development of young people. That has just been my life's purpose. It's something that my grandmother instilled in me. But my dad's voice would echo in my head because I didn't want to do this. I was actually supposed to try to do this in 2023, and I was like, nope, because if y'all get me on this board and somebody does something to violate the well-being of a child, at the very same board meeting, I'm gonna get arrested. because I'm slapped the shit out of somebody. I promise you, and that's not an exaggeration, because I've actually fought a principal before because he tried to, I shouldn't even say that out loud. I'm very serious. If you try to harm a child in my presence, it's not going to end well. And so I have this purpose of trying to protect young people. And I know that a lot of times we approach particularly young black males through a deficit lens. But I'll tell you a very quick story that happened to me this morning. I was on Instagram and I saw this reel, and the title of the reel was it was something to the effect of the most gangster hoods in Cincinnati. And it was about 12 young black kids who fit a particular stereotype. 12 black men, young men who fit a particular stereotype. And they were just sitting there, they were talking, and then they began to capture footage about this area in over the Rhine. And they were talking about the negativities and so on and so forth. And oddly enough, they began to capture footage of an elderly black woman who was in a wheelchair. She was obviously disenfranchised. Her wardrobe was disheveled. And the entire time she was talking about love. She just kept saying, this is literally a direct quote, "I love y'all and I don't even know y'all." She said, wheelchair. Her clothes were stained and everything. And then it cuts to them going around the neighborhood doing the same things that they had been doing before, which is basically just capturing how tough they were. Then it began to dawn on me, who edited that film? They did. And they decided to keep in the love story. There's something incredibly redeeming about that, and they knew it. So it occurs to me that if we are able to tap in to what the elders are telling us, that the young people know intuitively, then we have a lot to go on to rebuild what we need to rebuild. And I can't sit around and wait for it to happen, because if I did, my dad would kill me. I get whooped. Facts. And I'm 51 years old. My dad is still one.
That reminds me of in Good Kid, Mad City. There's a brief little interlude where like the young group that Kendrick is kind of like representing throughout the album. They are they doing whatever they're doing outside, and a woman stops them and prays over them.
Yes.
And that's
exactly what that was. Exactly what that was. But the thing was, they kept it.
Right. Exactly.
They could have edited that out to talk about the toughness.
Right.
But these young boys kept in this woman exalting love on them.
Right.
Right? There's something meaningful about the thought process in their brains that said, we need to keep this. Right. In a video that was titled "The Most Gangster Hoods in Cincinnati." Yeah. And the dominant part was about the elders of our community professing love over their lives. Yeah. Come on, man.
So you've a couple of times you've mentioned one quote that really sticks with me from my father is, "It's better to have and not need than to need and not have," and I stick with that every single day. And every single time I'm like, I think about that, and then I don't bring the thing, then I need the thing. And I'm like, okay, elders being right, in that sense. Now, Davia, for you, these things that are passed down to us, not all of them are necessarily, they help in a present situation, right? Have you ever had to unlearn a belief passed down through family or faith in order to better love somebody in your life?
Sheesh, my word. Part of the discovery of self has been some of the unlearning. And what exactly to unlearn? The carrying of guilt. I've seen people operate in spaces of guilt, and it has really destroyed parts of their spirit. And with guilt comes about releasing, but we don't operate in the space of release. So I have recognized in relationships, I've recognized in my familial patterns that there are some who still walk around wounded. as opposed to operating voids and holes so that they're not walking around creating more damage from the space of those gaping holes. And so that's one thing that I have seen and practiced that I've for myself, because part of my own personal edict is life has to look like I know myself, I like myself, and I love myself. And in that pattern, everything has to be a reflection of that. My relationships, my friendships, my energy space, what I contribute, how I sow, how I reap, how I harvest. It all should look like that lady loves herself, she likes herself, and she loves herself. And it doesn't have to look like it to everybody, but as long as it looks like it to me, I'm good. So that has been something that I have had to kind of go against the grain as opposed to how some other people in my family may operate. At the same time, one thing I have witnessed is the evolution of personhood. And I have been blessed to watch my elders transform as well. You know, when you're younger, you think about the elders in your family as being complete packages. Like, you're grown, you know it all. And then the next thing you know, you cross over to 40 and be like, I don't know nothing. And then you realize, like, you have to give grace for other people because they ain't know either. You know, but they were trying their best in what they did know. And some of what they did know was in the continuation of a pattern that they had learned. And loved witnessing because it also allows me to give grace in the process, not just to myself, but also with others, is that we're still evolving. And as we evolve, especially those that continue to stay in their word, those that continue to stay in community, those that continue to stay in relationship, those that continue to try to lead in love, the experience that I have with them on this side of life is so different than what I experienced with some of them when I was younger. And it allows me to, not just to operate in the grace, but also in the gift of this new person who I may have a relationship with or started a relationship with, but who they are now is completely different.
Come on, that's so well said. That's so well said. I'm at this point in my life right now where I'm giving my mother advice, you know, and she's calling me in times of stress or times where she's about to lose it on somebody, and that's a new development in our relationship, you know, and I see what you're saying about the grace, and my mom had me when she was 21 and she was trying to graduate college, you know, and I've watched her really come up in life for real, you know, and becoming established in her career and all of, you know, like I've seen all of that with her, and from the time that she stayed home with my siblings and I, you know, raising us and putting her career to the side. And now I get it. Like, I always, when I was a child, I saw my mother as this angry woman all the time, you know, and now I see, like, oh, you were trying your best. I think recognizing when the source of something is love versus something else, you know, is really important. And I recognize my mother, all she wants in life is to just be the best mom that she can be, but she's a human. She hasn't always been able to do that. And at 30, I get that. Like, I see that in her, because what was important for me, though, for forgiveness for her, was understanding that she was coming from love. She was rooted in love. Even when she was angry, she was rooted in love. If she wasn't, then we would have a different conversation, right? Now, it through my head, right? And Kareem, I've seen you in spaces where, you know, if I wasn't there with you, you would have been the only black person in that room, right? Or the only black male in that room, right? And that can be really hard, and that can be really taxing in a way that other people don't really notice is going on in you, right? Can you, what's the lesson that you've learned? The question that I want to ask is, how do you cultivate community in the face of isolation or tokenism?
That's good.
Well, you know, I am from Northern Kentucky, you know that. So I've had a lifetime to cultivate and to learn how to no shade, y'all. That is a really good question, and it comes from that sense of the community. So you said I'm from Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky has roughly about 7% African American, roughly in the three northern Kentucky counties. Covington and Newport, kind of the river cities where I'm from, probably twice as much as the percentage in those spaces. but I feel that I'm lucky because it's like every time I walk out the door, it's a family reunion. My family has been in the area for over 100 years. It's literally, I went to an event this morning in Newport and people came up to me and said, Kareem, how's your family? How's your mom doing? I do not know who you are. I don't, but I remember your face and I should know you. And I said, she's fine, she's great. She's living in Houston. That type of community, knowing that I have that community surrounding me, helps me navigate through these different spaces and helps to give me the confidence to bring my authentic self and to stay grounded. And it also gives me the confidence to bring those individuals into those other spaces where they might not feel comfortable.
Right.
So I can also kind of look back on a lot of the things that has motivated me. Seeing, say for instance, when I was a kid, Mae Jemison, she was the first Black astronaut to go into space. From Chicago. Okay, all right. Where's she from again? I got to hear it again. Just make sure. Okay. I met her when I was a kid going to the Boys and Girls Club representation. So I said, "Oh, Black people can't go to space. I'm not going, but but I'm glad that they can't go." And kind of, I want to be that for other people. I wrote a book in 2013 called Chronicles of a Boy Misunderstood, and it's putting the gay Black male in the front of the narrative, and being the heroine in each one of those stories. And I needed to get it out on paper. 5 years later, I was at an event. And a kid came up to me, and I said kid, they were probably like maybe 19, and they said, "Hey, are you the author K.A. Simpson?" And I was like, "What? Who's looking for me? Are you a bill collector? What's going on? Did you write blah blah blah?" And he said that changed his life. 5 years later, that was the first. I was like, "This is why I wrote this book, and I'm good. I don't have to do any more of that book." So I'm like, "What's my next book?" So that was. Representation means a lot, and keeping grounded and bringing individuals up with you. Not only doing it for yourself, but also making sure that other people have the space to get into the space that you're already in.
Yeah, yeah. I hear some nods and
man.
grunts of agreement.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there something that's ringing for y'all right now or resonating for y'all?
Oh man. The level of the meaning of representation, the importance of representation is so critical, particularly in a space and time where people who are historically marginalized are still trying to be erased. The histories of those individuals still trying to be erased. And so not only representation, but the strength to be able to say, you done lost your damn mind if you're trying to erase me. Right? To be able to stand 10 toes down and say, not only will you not erase me, if you continue this effort, there will be some problems, right? And then to be able to bolster another generation to say, not only will I be a representative for you, I require that you be empowered to represent for the next generation that's following, right? Because if we continue to operate in a space of reactivity or just passivity, that level of erasure will actually happen, right? And so it's representation with a sense of determination, right? That is required to be insistent upon. You are the thing. I'm not trying to convert anybody who doesn't believe, right? So if you're obstinate against the story that's being told, or you're obstinate against that level of representation, I'm not trying to convert you. I'm basically trying to tell you you're not going to erase it. I have a responsibility, however, to provide a clear narrative, a clear representation of what that story is, of what that history is, to those who don't know. Even if it starts with an old lady in a wheelchair just saying, "I love you," right? And I don't even know you. because that's where the representation begins. Not with an entire thesis. It starts with letting people know we're doing this out of love, right? Because we often live in a world that's transactional, right? And in that transaction, there is no love. There's basically just, it's a commodity. You're doing things because America is not really a country anymore, it's a corporation. It's just like, okay, we got to get away from that, right? This is not a zero-sum proposition, right? This world does not have to be win or lose. Capitalism will tell you something different, but it doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. And we have historical references of representation that says this can be a collaborative effort where love is the rising tide that raises all of these boats. Mm-hmm. And nobody has to be in a space of suffering. But there has to be a voice that says that from the perspective of a strong gay black man or a strong black woman, right? Or an old dude, right? It has to, all of that is necessary because there is some young person looking and saying, how do I define myself? Who am I? And they have to have a point of reference. It's not to suggest, however, that who I am is going to be who they are. They just need an anchor point. Right. And that anchor point requires courage.
Oh, man. I've got so much to say. I've got so much to say. Okay, so you're talking. Everybody so far there's a vulnerability in everything that y'all do, and this vulnerability is a choice, right? I think it's very easy for us to put our guards up, to put our defenses up, to go into attack mode in a lot of these spaces, especially education spaces or work spaces, right, or even research spaces, I would assume, right? What role does vulnerability play in your current understanding of fatherhood or just role modelship, whether personal or creative? And Davia, I would love to start with you. I also failed to mention this at the beginning, but Davia, you are the first woman that has been included as an interviewee in the Stallings.
Thank you.
And that's really significant for me because I've always wanted to invite women into this conversation. I've always wanted motherhood and daughterhood to be included in this conversation. That's something that I wouldn't lead necessarily, right? But I think that this is a step into women being included in this soft and tender world as well, right? And so one, I really appreciate you making history right now for us, right? But two, I think that your perspective is so important, especially when we're talking about vulnerability and fatherhood and understanding that. So this question is for everybody, but I do want to start with you, Davia. Again, the question is, what role does vulnerability play in your current understanding of fatherhood, whether personal or creative?
I think vulnerability is everything. Vulnerability is what takes the shield off that kind of makes our paternal figures seem otherworldly and bring them back into the fold of humanity. Vulnerability offers room for their own personal growth. And so you don't carry with you this resentment of the person that you thought they were versus the person that they are. I think vulnerability also invites you into relational spaces where you too can be vulnerable and be safe, because it's hard to be vulnerable with someone who's not being vulnerable with you. And so for me, again, the blessing of having my father as my father. My parents were 21 and 22 respectively when they had me. Okay, so I like to say that the version of my parents that I got is a different version than my brother Malcolm got, because he came later, right? But my perspective has been, I've been able to watch them grow up and grow up with them. And in watching them grow, it has given me such great perspective and personal power in the space of, I don't have to be perfect to be good. I don't have to be perfect to be great. And I don't have to be perfect to be impactful. I can be, in the space of my being, that's the power, that's the impact. My father and I recently had one of the most profound conversations of our relationship. Mind you, I'm 40. We probably had one of the most profound conversations in our relationship because it was one of the most no holds barred And it's not that we ever had conversations where it was, I'm presenting a version to you and you're presenting a version to me. Like, we've always been real one-on-one. But as of late, I felt like there's been some static and some distance and some friction and whatever else. But we sat on the back patio of my parents' house, and it was the most enlightening and enlarging conversation ever. And in it, he admitted some faults. I admitted some faults. We got to flesh out some miscommunications and some perceptions that we both were carrying. And it was just so raw and so good. So when I say that vulnerability is everything, vulnerability is what creates the door to have real engaged relationship. The other part is I got to see what paternal, masculine, romantic love looked like through my father by watching how he loved on my mother. Yeah. And in that, it established for me the type of love I wanted in my life. So my father is a 6'2", a solid 250, 270 black dude that people see him and think, oh, he a bodyguard. You know what I'm saying? Like, legit, like he about to wrestle somebody right now. My husband and I are the same height. And I know I weigh at least 30 more pounds than my husband does. So when you look at the contrast, it was, that's your daddy, but that's your man. Like, and I've had these engaged conversations with people who look in a state of confusion, like, what's going on with your father-daughter relationship that your husband looks completely different than your dad? Because the assumption is always, if you have a good relationship with your father, if you have a good da-da-da-da-da, then it's going to be a mirror. I'm like, y'all don't see their souls. The way my husband loves me is how my daddy loved my mama. Wow. And that's how I knew my husband was my husband. You know what I'm saying? So, but I would have never received that if I didn't have that vulnerable relationship with my dad. So that for me sets the tone of everything.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Okay. Now, Kareem, having a very different experience growing up, right? Same question for you. What does vulnerability to just being a black role model, being a role model, right? What role does vulnerability play in that for you?
I'm going to steal Davia's answer. Not the whole thing, because I was fired. But vulnerability is everything. I'll tell you this: 6 months ago, I wouldn't be on this stage having this conversation. I've never told anyone that I don't know my dad. I've never told anyone, and now like 70 people I'm telling. The January of 2023, I started a journey. I had probably 70. I'm not 70, but maybe 10 big walls up around, so I was not vulnerable at all. And systematically, I started knocking them down over the last couple of years. Sometimes the walls get jutted back up real quick, and you got to put them back down. But I say all that is because knocking down those walls and being vulnerable has helped me be a better role model to my nieces and nephews. So they see Uncle Kareem on the school board, they see Uncle Kareem working in these spaces, and it gives them the capacity to say, oh, that could be done by someone that looks like me because my uncle did it. Yeah. My uncle's doing it. And they're teenagers now, they're in that formative age. You kind of know that the middle school and high school are that's where we start losing kids. And I have a couple of black male nephews that they could either way. Like any one of us actually could have gone either way, and that part I feel that time is crucial. So if I still had those walls up, I wouldn't be able to be there to my nieces and nephews now when they need it, as they do need it. So I had to become vulnerable. In addition to that, I love my nieces and nephews, but that vulnerability has made me become a better person, I feel. Case in point, I'm able to have this conversation. Yeah. A lot of things I'm still learning. I think the more vulnerable you are, I think you're more able to facilitate getting to learn about yourself. And you're never going to know everything about yourself, but if you continue moving forward, incremental movements forward, that's all you can live for. And as long as I'm moving forward, not straight, forward. As long as I'm moving forward, I feel that I am getting to my goal and making myself become, that's all I can do. I can't do any better than that. Just continue to move forward.
Come on. Damian, I wanna end this with you, the same question, and I think, as a black father, right, as a black son of a black father, very curious to hear your perspective on this too, about your understanding of vulnerability within fatherhood.
I struggle with it. I have to be honest. I struggle with vulnerability. When I was about 10 years old, my mother, who I like a lot now, by the way, I did not for a really long time. She took my sister and I from Cincinnati and moved us to Atlanta. Now, at 10, I don't know the circumstances behind, the inner workings of it. I do know that her and my father had what was ostensibly shared custody of us. But she didn't tell my father that she was taking us. And so we moved to Atlanta, and for 1,460 days, my father did not know where we were. He didn't know if we were alive. This is pre-Google, by the way. This is pre-internet. So you couldn't just get on, when nobody's sharing locations, right? Everything was on paper, and your TV, you had to turn with a knob, right? This is a different time. 1,460 days, I did not see my father. He did not know if we were alive. He happened to find out at the Kroger parking lot in Corryville, where a in-law saw him, greeted him, and said, "How are the kids liking Atlanta?"
Oh, wow.
And he said, "Whose kids?" Because he had no idea where we were. And that was actually still in year one, at the end of year one in that time. So now he knows we're in Atlanta. Atlanta's a pretty big place. He doesn't know where. It wasn't until my sister started getting in trouble that my mother sent her back, and that's year 4, that my mother sent her back. And here's the thing, she sent my sister back. She drove my sister back. She wasn't driving me back. I still stayed in Atlanta. She drove my sister back, so my sister, because she had a boyfriend and he almost got killed on my front steps by a rival gang. This is a lot that I'm unpacking right now. This is why I struggle with vulnerability. But I'm telling y'all, so don't tell nobody. She drives her back. She tells my dad she's gonna get in trouble. She may potentially die. And my dad, without question, without equivocation, bring her here, right? He didn't know where we were for 1,460 days, and my mother just dropped my sister off. That summer, I'm there, I finish out the school year. I'm there by myself with this woman that I do not like. My mother was incredibly abusive too. And the only reason that she abused me is because I reminded her of my father. And so that summer, we came back to Cincinnati to visit my grandmother and everybody, and I saw my dad, I saw my sister, and I didn't want to go back to Atlanta. And so she felt that, she sensed that, and she asked me, "You want to stay, don't you?" And I looked at her without hesitation and I said, "Yes, please." And so she talked it over with my dad. The conversation probably lasted 7 minutes. And my dad said, "Bring him back too." The vulnerability that would allow for him to say that to her without any kind of anger is immense. The reason that I struggle with it never made sense to me. It never made sense to me because my father was not an abusive man. He was not an angry man. He was a creative. She just didn't like him anymore. That ain't his problem. That's your problem. She just don't want to be married to him anymore. That has nothing to do with us. It's an adult thing. I struggle with vulnerability. I'm 51 years old. I have. I get that reference. That was incredibly funny. And so, I struggle with vulnerability primarily because that is still an unresolved issue in my heart. And I even had the conversation with my mother when I was 30 in my kitchen. And my mother cried because I told her about how I felt about it. And I was pissed off that she cried. It was like, no, you did this. If anybody should be hurt, it should be me and my father, right? I have 4 kids, and so as much as I possibly can, I open up, but I don't open up entirely. I open up with this sense of protection that, not that I have to protect myself from them, is that I'm always on guard because me and their mother is divorced, right? And so I'm always on guard, and I have to play offense and defense simultaneously because I don't want these wounds from adults to impact another generation. And so I struggle with vulnerability because I feel like I should be able to open up entirely. I love my children. My youngest son is 13. He looks just like me. My oldest daughter is 22. She's on Broadway now. I have a beautiful, 4 beautiful children. I have 2 wonderful, I call them my bonus daughters. And I have a beautiful grandson, which I'm going to pick up right after this show. He's 2. And we are going to hang out. But anyway, I struggle with opening up in that sense of vulnerability that allows for a person to be completely transparent about how they feel, because that is a wound and baggage that I carry from the time that I was 10 years old. And I can't put it down because I feel like if I put it down, then when the shit hits the fan, I won't be ready. So I'm offense and defense. I'm always on guard, but I always try to love as best I can. But I'll have to admit that inability to be completely vulnerable, I know it stifles my love. And it's a great question, and I don't have a profound answer for it because I'm not completely healed. I'm not completely healed from that particular moment, and I can't fully open up with how that feels because I can't really even articulate it as best as I can. I'm telling you as much as I can tell you, but at the end of the day, it feels that I can't put into words, right? So please, when you leave here, don't tell nobody I told y'all this.
Nah, I really appreciate you ending us off with this admittance of growth, and I think that we are all in that. I know for a fact we are all in that same boat of having something that we are ourselves, right? There are things for myself that I do not have figured out, and I may never have figured out until I'll be on my deathbed, maybe figuring things out, right? And that's okay, right? But what I do know is that each of y'all has such a beautiful legacy that you are building, that you have already built. And one thing, I'll end things with this, that one thing that my father says that I've always struggled with up until recently is that he would be like, if I die today, I'm happy with the life that I had. And I would always for me think, but it's like, but that's, you're not thinking big enough, Dad. There's so much other things to do, and you got your house and your family, but there's just so much else out there. And for him, it was, no, I can rest knowing that I did a good job. And I have recently come to that same place of looking back at the things that I've built, and if today was my day, I did a damn good job, and I'm okay with that, and I get to look forward to continuing to doing a damn good job and evolving, So thank y'all for participating in this, for opening up. Thank you all for being such a respectful and great audience. I know that you have experienced a lot in these 2 hours, from the hip-hop storytelling to music to conversation, but one thing that I wanted to start off with Stephen's storytelling, because hip-hop really is this vessel for our stories, and for me, this show, this series, being spawned off of a hip-hop song, a rap song that I wrote about my dad, and now we're sitting here talking about these things. this is what hip hop is supposed to do. This is the power of hip hop. For the Taft folks, the Duncanson folks that brought me in, I'm so grateful that y'all gave me this space to be able to show in real. Right, so thank y'all for that. And I think we have a little bit of, oh yes.
I was going to just close out.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
I have to say thank you for joining us today. Amazing conversation. This is what needs to happen more. I feel that opening it up with things like this will help people heal and to become vulnerable or learn how to be in that space. This residency has been amazing. And I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your talents, bringing it to Cincinnati. Hopefully you'll be back sometime in some shape or form. Conclude the residency, that concludes the event. That conclude that. Do you want to say something, Q? What did you?
I was just going to say, as a Duncanson Society member, don't let the residency be the last time that you keep in contact with the Taft Museum of Art. Those Duncanson murals are there all year round, and we would love to have you come back and visit the Taft Museum of Art to see what other amazing things our incredible director and our incredible Duncanson Artist in Residence Coordinator have in store.
And I like to add on top of that too. Don't let this be the last time we are connected. I'm going back to Chicago tomorrow, so I ain't gonna see y'all. Follow me at Rich Robbins. Please do. Please stay connected with me. My goal here was to not come here for 2 weeks and then leave, and then that was it. I want this. This is a part of my network now, you know. And the Soft and Tender series is also on Instagram. If you follow at Soft and Tender series, you can find us, and we have clips. We have a podcast coming out and everything. So please stay in touch. Please stay tapped in. That is one beauty of social media that we still have.
You family now.
Yeah.
Hey, for real.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.